Good morning. I'm Martha Raddatz in Washington, and we are coming on the air because the flag-draped remains of the 13 fallen U.S. service members who were killed on Thursday in Afghanistan have now arrived back in the United States to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Earlier this morning, President Biden and the First Lady left the White House to meet with the family members and participate in what is known as a dignified transfer movement. The servicemen and women, 11 Marines, 1 Navy corpsman, and 1 U.S. Army soldier were killed when a suicide bomber detonated a suicide vest filled with explosives at the Abbey Gate of the Kabul airport. The U.S. military was there helping facilitate the evacuation of Americans and Afghans out of Kabul in advance of President Biden's August 31st deadline for U.S. troops to leave Afghanistan. President Biden said last night that it was highly likely another attack could take place in the next 24 to 36 hours, and tensions could not be higher as we approach that final withdrawal deadline. This morning, U.S. officials confirm an airstrike was conducted against an ISIS-K planner in a vehicle believed to pose a threat to the airport. This, of course, follows another drone strike on Friday night against an ISIS-K target. We are going to look at that dignified transfer taking place at Dover Air Base right now, where so many have taken place in the years before. But this is President Biden's first as president. You see First Lady Jill Biden there as well, and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin waiting for the remains of those service members to come off of that C-17 aircraft. I want to read the names of those we have lost in Kabul, Afghanistan this week. The majority of them under 20, only one 31 years old, and that is Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover from Salt Lake City, Utah. At 31, he was the oldest of the fallen, his father calling him one heck of a leader, saying his son decided he wanted to join the military at a young age, a very young age, after 9/11. Marine Corps Sergeant Johanny Rosario Picardo, 25 years old, from Lawrence, Massachusetts. The state's governor calling her a Massachusetts hero gone too soon. Rosario, originally from the Dominican Republic, the country's ambassador to the U.S., saying the Dominican community shares in the loss. She was one of 2 women killed in that suicide bombing. The other, Marine Sergeant Nikoi G., 23 years old, from Sacramento, California. She was married to a fellow Marine. Days before her death, she was featured in a photo released by the Defense Department cradling an Afghan baby at the Kabul airport, a friend posting on Facebook that she was a light in this dark world. And we have lost Marine Corps Corporal Hunter Lopez, 22 years old, from Indio, California, the son of 2 local Sheriff's Department employees. The Sheriff's Association says he was planning to join the same department when he returned from deployment. And Marine Corps Corporal Deegan William Tyler Page, 23 years old, from Omaha, Nebraska. His family saying he had a tough outer shell and a giant heart. The family says he planned to go to trade school and possibly become an electrical lineman after his enlistment ended. And Marine Corps Lance Corporal David Espinoza from Laredo, Texas, also just 20 years old. He enlisted in the Marines after graduating from high school. His mother saying it was his calling, and he died a hero. Marine Corps Corporal Humberto Sanchez, 22 years old, from Logansport, Indiana. He was among 17 members of his high school class who joined the military after graduation. His former principal remembering him as a popular and athletic young man who was honored to be serving his country. And Marine Lance Corporal Jared Smith from St. Charles, Missouri, was 20 years old. His father says this was something he always wanted to do, and he'd never seen a Marine Lance Corporal. Dylan Marola was on his first overseas deployment. A friend posting on a GoFundMe page that the 20-year-old from Rancho Cucamonga, California, always showed up with a smile, and brought energy to everyone he was with. And Marine Lance Corporal Riley McCollum of Jackson, Wyoming, was just weeks away from becoming a father. The 20-year-old married in February on Valentine's Day. He was expecting his first child in just weeks. His sister said he joined the Marines on the day he turned 18. And Marine Lance Corporal Dylan Marola was on his first overseas deployment, a friend posting on a GoFundMe page. We just spoke of him, that he always showed up with a smile and brought energy to everyone he was with. And Marine Lance Corporal Kareem Nikoi was just 20 and from Norco, California. His father said he loved what he was doing. He always wanted to be a Marine and had no hesitation for him to be called to duty. He planned to make the Marines his career. And Navy Hospital Corpsman Naxton Soviak from Berlin Heights, Ohio, was 22. His father told a reporter that in their last FaceTime with their son, when his mother told him to be safe, he said, "Don't worry, Mom. My guys got me. They won't let anything happen to me." Today, she realized they all just went together. And Army Staff Sergeant Ryan Noss, the 23-year-old, was from Corrytown, Tennessee, joined the Army right out of high school. This was his second deployment to Afghanistan, his grandfather calling him a motivated young man who loved his country. As we watch those remains, as we watch the solemn men and women there watching that, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin again, First Lady Jill Biden, and you saw the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, who has been to so many of these. Watching with me now is our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell in Doha, our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, former Army Ranger Jericho Denman, who has just arrived back in the U.S. from Kabul, where he was helping with the evacuation efforts at the airport just moments before the blast took place on Thursday. And at the White House this morning, White House correspondent Mary Alice Parks. Jericho, I want to start with you. This must be heart-wrenching. You've done 15 deployments yourself, lost so many friends, but these were such young men and women, and you were just with them. You knew some of them this morning. Just your thoughts as you watch this.
Yeah, my thoughts now are with, you know, I was with that platoon all through the week, and just thinking about the times that I had interactions with a few of them that I can remember very vividly in my head, and how happy they were to be there, and how selfless and humble they were in everything they were doing. And then really, I'm thinking back to the experiences I've had, and just thinking about all the traumatic baggage and the work that everyone is going to be putting in the weeks to come and the years to come of how much this is going to touch so many people. And just hope that it's as easy for them as it possibly can be.
Jericho, we're not used to seeing scenes like this mass casualty of our American service members coming off a plane like this. These are not hardened warriors. I have known you for a while. I know how this affects you. You were telling me earlier, Nicole G., the young Marine we saw cradling that baby. You met her.
I did. I was with Ark Salas, the group I was with, pushing out a sortie of about 145 Afghans, and she was there helping us just corral them onto the plane, and she was just a spark plug, running around, big smile on her face, happy to do anything she needed to do. I was out there taking some photos, and she asked, "Hey, can I get those?" So I got her information to send the photos to her when I got back. It's a really sad time, but also everybody should just be incredibly proud of everything that she was doing, and these other Marines and soldiers and sailors.
And they put one another in, they put themselves in great danger out there by that gate, you as well, to help Afghans, to help American citizens try to get through that gate.
Right. You know, I've been asked why they were all there, why they were closely together, and the answer is they were assuming risk. They all knew the risk that they were assuming by being in such close proximity to the mob, to these crowds. And they could have very easily said, hey, we're going to pull back and we're going to take more measures to make ourselves safer, but they knew that that would mean less of our partners and less American citizens and less Afghans would escape what they were trying to escape from. So absolute definition of selfless service and absolute definition of being a good American.
And I should tell our viewers that we are not hearing what's happening at Dover just out of respect for the families. We are only allowed to see those remains come off. And John Carl is here with me as well. This is the hardest thing for any president to do.
The hardest thing for any president. Joe Biden announced his withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan because he wanted to avoid scenes just like this. And here you have today, seeing those caskets come off, 13 brave Americans who paid the ultimate sacrifice in what were the first combat deaths in Afghanistan, American U.S. combat deaths in Afghanistan since February of last year, and the single deadliest day for the American military in over a decade. And that weighs on Joe Biden as he looks at this, and questions raised about what got us to this moment. You know, when Joe Biden's son, Beau Biden, went to, he served in the Army, went to Iraq in 2008, Biden said at the time, quite frankly and candidly, he did not want him to go. And I think he often thinks of Beau when he's faced with a circumstance like this. Think about how many times you've seen Joe Biden give a speech and end that speech by saying, God bless America and God bless our troops.
And this truly must be especially hard because of the criticism he's receiving for how poorly this has gone.
He wanted to end, he wanted to see no more scenes like this. And here, towards the end of the process of Americans leaving Afghanistan, he sees the deadliest day for American service members in over a decade.
And Mary Alice, I want to turn to you there at the White House. He is there at Dover this morning, just hours after a drone strike that took out a vehicle suicide bombing, we assume, dealing with that as well, and also with just 2 days left before the deadline.
And Martha, the Pentagon confirmed that second strike just as the president was starting to meet with families. The Pentagon saying that it was a proactive defensive strike to thwart an imminent attack. You can imagine that he might have gotten questions today there while talking to families. The White House told us that he was being kept abreast of everything that was going on. He's traveling with members of his national security team. But back to John's point there about just how the president had hoped to avoid scenes like this. In some ways, the country's been grappling not only with the magnitude of this attack, but like you said, just how young the service members were, 20 to 31 years old. And in a tragic way, that seems to sort of underscore exactly what the president had been saying this last week when he would defend his decision to withdraw, that he did not want to see another generation in harm's way. You know, I think about how he often prides himself on being a consoler in chief. He sees it as a strength that he has as a leader, someone who can talk about the pain of losing family members. But of course, this is different because he acknowledged this week that as commander in chief, all final decisions rest with him, and the families there know that. Martha.
Thanks, Mary Alice. Ian, I want to turn to you. We know you were in Kabul just before that blast, and I am struck by looking at the tail of that C-17 and how many have taken off. They have gotten about 110,000 Afghans and American citizens out of there with a great deal of work, a great deal of risk. But 2 days from now, the U.S. military will be out of there. And what do you expect?
Yeah, that's right. And I just want to echo what Jericho was saying, because we met him on the site and we were on that very spot where the blast took place 24 hours earlier. And he's absolutely right. They were taking incredible personal risk for rescuing and helping Americans and Afghans every single minute of the day. And of course, that shrinking time window exacerbated the sense of having to get people out quickly and contributed to the mass crowds and the difficulty of conducting that operation. But you're right, 48 hours to go. I've been speaking to someone who has just come out from Kabul airport. They tell me that they are still managing to get some people through to the airbase, but of course the time is going to come in the next day or so where that will inevitably stop. And then the question remains, how many Americans are left behind? How many Afghans who risk their lives to support the mission, to support the NATO mission, the US mission there? We've been in touch with a number of people, translators who work for the US military, one who worked for the Green Berets. Veterans in the United States have been working overtime to try and get people out, but you now have this whole series of ad hoc routes where people are trying to assist others. There's one SIV applicant called Pawana who we've been in touch with for 10 days or so. She stayed outside the gates to the airport, having been told to go there 3 days and 3 nights with young children. Terrified, she's now back at home. She just sent us the most moving, desperate voice message saying, we've been abandoned and we are dead. Now, we know that systems are being put in place, and the Taliban have said that they will allow people to leave through the commercial airport when it reopens. But remember, we were at the very first Taliban press conference. I was in the front row. I asked the Taliban, will you guarantee the safe passage of those Afghans who work with the Americans to the airport? And he said yes. You know, the promises that the Taliban have made have not been adhered to. And although we can say, yes, there is a system in place, the reality tonight is that there are tens of thousands of people who believe they've just been sentenced to death. And just one thing before I hand back to you, a thought for the 170 Afghans who also tragically died. They died because they were trying to get out of the country. They were already in fear for their lives. And this was Afghans and Americans both risking their lives. And today they're both united in grief. Martha.
They certainly are, Ian. And as we watch those flag-draped remains, we know they will all be returned to their hometowns. And Jericho, this is such a solemn, solemn moment. I've been on those planes with flag-draped remains. You never forget it. I'd like you to have the last word, Jericho, and what you think happens now in Afghanistan and your final thoughts on those we've lost.
I think what happens now is the military and our service members continue to do what we always do, and they're going to do the best they can and execute this mission better than we imagined they could, in spite of the circumstances that they've been put in. And in the coming days, I just want to say that everyone should be very, very proud and not taint the memories of these service members by saying it was a waste or anything like that. They were absolutely doing just what they wanted to. They were where they wanted to be, and they sacrificed their lives for, as cliche as it is, for the people with them and for the people they were trying to save. So we should honor them and do everything we can for their families and for their friends in the weeks to come.
And I know, Jericho, you will keep trying to get Afghans out and American citizens in your unofficial role as a veteran, and we thank you. We return you now to regular programming, but we leave you with the names and images of the 13 fallen servicemen and women, 11 Marines, 1 Navy corpsman, and 1 U.S. Army soldier. I'm Martha Raddatz.